Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a hard look at the idea of meritocracy. We're all told it's the fairest system. Work hard, get ahead. But what if the whole thing, especially when it comes to getting into an American university, was never about finding the best people? What if it was designed to create a very specific kind of elite? And what if the price for that is that almost everyone else gets left behind? Okay, so let's dive right in with a pretty basic question, one that anyone who's ever looked at the American college application process has probably asked themselves. Seriously, why is getting into a university in the US so incredibly, mind-numbingly complicated? If you compare it to most other countries, the American process is just this wild maze of requirements. And it turns out that complexity, it is not an accident. It has a very specific and honestly a pretty surprising origin story. And this slide really lays it all out. In most countries, it's pretty straightforward. You take one big exam, your score on that day basically decides your future. Simple, right? But the US system is a whole different beast. It's this whirlwind of grades, test scores, sports, clubs, what your teachers think of you, and of course, those personal essays, all supposedly designed to get a sense of your character. But why? Why does the American system care so much about something so vague? Well, to get the answer, we have to turn back the clock. Because the entire system we're dealing with today was really shaped by a fierce power struggle between America's oldest, most powerful universities. So the Ivy League didn't start out as this bastion of the elite. Harvard, for example, was founded to train ministers. But as America got richer and a lot less religious, these schools basically turned into exclusive social clubs for the wealthy. The problem was, by the early 1900s, these brand new academically superior research universities started popping up. And all of a sudden, the Ivy League was in real danger of becoming totally irrelevant. Harvard's big move to stay on top was actually a stroke of genius. They created the SAT. It started as a scholarship program to pull in the absolute brightest kids from all over America, which would, of course, boost their academic street cred. But this genius move created a massive new problem. The children of their rich, powerful alumni now had to compete with these brilliant kids from nowhere. So what did Harvard do? They invented a solution we're all still living with: holistic admissions. The idea was to evaluate an applicant's entire character, not just their test scores. I mean, it sounds perfectly fair, doesn't it? But the argument here is that its original purpose was, well, anything but. And this is where we get to the really uncomfortable part of the story. The source we're looking at claims this whole system was basically engineered as a tool for discrimination. This new, fuzzy focus on character became a perfect, subjective excuse to filter out academically brilliant Jewish applicants who just didn't fit that old-school, athletic, manly vibe that Harvard wanted to hold on to. Now, that history directly connects to the modern logic of elite admissions. Because the argument is, these places don't really operate like schools at all. They operate like something else entirely. They act like venture capital firms. Think about it. According to the source, their main goal isn't really to educate you. It's to maximize the power and prestige of their brand. And how do they do that? By investing in the students they think will give them the biggest return on that investment. This slide just illustrates their investment model perfectly. Look, they're not trying to find a whole class of people who will be moderately successful doctors or lawyers. No. They would much rather bet on a class where a few students become, world-changing billionaires or presidents, even if the rest just fade away. Why? Because we only remember the massive successes, and those huge wins reflect directly back on the university's brand. So what signals that kind of explosive potential? According to this source, it's not about having perfect grades. It's a very specific psychological profile. They're looking for desperation, a feeling that getting in is literally a life-or-death situation. They're looking for insecurity, this deep psychological void that can only be filled by constant achievement. And they're looking for transgression, a history of bending or breaking the rules to get what you want. These are the markers of a high-risk, high-reward investment. But here's the thing. A system that goes out of its way to find people with these traits doesn't just attract traumatized people. It actually creates a culture of trauma for everyone who gets pulled into it. So if you think getting into one of these elite schools is the finish line, you could not be more wrong. It's just the ticket to the main event, the Hunger Games. You are now thrown into a relentless, zero-sum competition against the most competitive people on the entire planet. For club positions, for scholarships, for grad school spots, it is a culture of nonstop judgment and competition.
And this toxic culture, it doesn't just start on campus. It begins way, way earlier. It literally reshapes how people raise their kids. Instead of healthy parenting, unconditional love that builds security, the meritocracy pushes a style of parenting that combines neglect with these intense demands for achievement. Love becomes conditional on success, which creates the exact psychological drive that these elite universities are looking for.
So what is the end game here? What is the price we all pay for a system that rewards trauma and this endless, brutal competition? Well, the effects are societal. And the data tells a pretty disturbing story. This chart shows that as more and more people have gone to college, the US has actually become one of the most unequal societies in the entire developed world. It's a bizarre paradox. And at the same time, the American dream itself seems to be fading. Social mobility has just cratered. Look at this data. Since 1940, the odds of a child earning more than their parents have absolutely plummeted. Each generation is finding it harder and harder to get ahead. So where did all that wealth and power go? It's been concentrated. I mean, get this number. It's just staggering. 7% of all Americans with a net worth over $100 million are Harvard graduates. The system has created this tiny, self-perpetuating elite, mostly coming from just a handful of schools. And the end result, the source argues, is a ruling class of people who are exceptionally good at one thing: achieving. They are masters of the game. But because they've been trained to follow the rules of that game so perfectly, they often lack any core principles or original ideas or a soul. They become, as the source puts it, robots who know how to win but not why they're winning. Okay, so this brings us to the final and probably the most important point. If this system is so damaging, is there a different way to think about learning and growth and what it even means to be successful? The source suggests we really have a choice between two models. On one hand, you have the learning model. This is about being open-minded, seeing failure as your best teacher, and taking time to reflect and build up resilience. On the other hand, you have the meritocracy model, which forces you to focus only on grades, makes you terrified of failure, and takes away any time for actual reflection. It prioritizes the appearance of success over the actual process of learning. And here is the ultimate trap. For anyone who isn't born into a powerful, wealthy family, this system can be absolutely devastating. It trains you to win a very specific, very narrow game. But in doing so, it can make you arrogant, calculating, and totally unable to handle real-world failure. It destroys the very skills like resilience and open-mindedness that you need for genuine, long-term success. And that leaves us right here with the central question of this whole explainer. In creating a system so intensely focused on competition and achievement, have we accidentally destroyed the very thing education is supposed to be about: a real ability to learn, to grow, and to fail without being afraid? What are we losing in our relentless drive to get ahead?